Hello everyone, and welcome back to the 3T Path channel. Welcome back to our Uddhava-gita course. Now we're in the middle of this amazing explanations from the Swan Avatar, Hamsa Avatar. Beautiful, deep philosophical explanations of the nature of spiritual reality. And the focus has been in the last class, and it's going to be on this class as well, on the dream states. How by observing the changing of your consciousness from awakening to dream to deep sleep, how you can use that to become enlightened. It's a fascinating concept that does come up in different places in the Vedas, and it comes up here very nicely in the Hamsa Avatar teachings. Now, we are in the 11th canto, 13th chapter, starting with verse 32. And of course, if you want to watch all the previous classes, we have 64 other classes already recorded. This is class 65. It's a huge course, and we're just starting. It's a very deep and powerful course. So if you want to watch the whole course, make sure you become a member of the channel. The instructions are here in the description of the video. And also check out Uddhava-gita.com. The whole course is organized there. Much easier to watch it through the website Uddhava-gita.com. Okay. So this is Hamsa Avatar, and he is still speaking with the four Kumaras and Lord Brahma. So he says, while awake, the living entity enjoys with all his senses the fleeting characteristics of the material body and mind. While dreaming, he enjoys similar experiences within the mind. And in deep dreamless sleep, all such experiences merge into ignorance. By remembering and contemplating the succession of wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep, the living entity can understand that he is one throughout the three stages of consciousness and is transcendental. Thus, he becomes the Lord of the senses. So this is the concept, this is the idea, that by observing just the most natural thing, which is your state of consciousness, you become the observer. That's the key part. In yoga, that is a key element in everything we do. We take a step back. We become the witness, in the words of the Yoga Sutras. We become the observer. So now we're observing our consciousness. And now as the observer, something that happens every day in a cycle. It's just right there, 24 hours a day. You know, every day you can see the process happening. You are awake and you're here engaged with all your senses. You know, and you can understand the fleeting characteristics of the material body and mind as Hamsa Avatar. So you're observing your mind and your body and everything that's going on. Okay. Then you'd have a dream. You go to sleep and you have a dream. And in the dream, the same things happen, but within the mind. So you're still experiencing senses and fleeting characteristics of the material body, but now just within the mind in dream sleep. And then you have the bits of sleep where you don't have anything going on, what we call deep sleep, right? And he says merge into ignorance. So it's just nothing going on. But it's a nothing, you know, but it's still something because it's not anything else. So it's not nothing, but it's you know, to use the words here, merged into it. It's just the darkness of nothingness, of experiencing nothingness, because we do experience deep sleep. If you don't have deep sleep, then you get very tired. You don't know the difference. So deep sleep is something we still experience. We're experiencing the deep sleep. So you're observing these things happening, you know, the waking state, the dreaming state, the deep sleep, and then you can notice that you are one throughout these three stages. This is the concept, this is the idea of this process. I'm still the same, I'm the observer. I'm observing whether it's this awakened reality, whether it's my dream sleep, whether it's my deep sleep. Hey, I'm still one. I'm the observer. So who am I? And thus you can understand that you're transcendental, and then you become the Lord of your senses, Hamsa Avatar says. Because look, I mean, if you see that it's just going on, things are just happening there, then you don't have to be a servant of the senses. The opposite of being the Lord of the senses is to being a servant of the senses, right? So in yoga, you see this a lot. You've heard of the term Swami, master of yourself, master of your senses. Swami is master of your senses. So to become Swami, to become master of your senses, because otherwise we are a slave of our senses, and then it's just material life. It's called a life guided by kama, just material desires. You just kama, lobha, krodha. It's just the three gates of hell Krishna describes in Bhagavad-gita, right? Your whole life is just chasing after these plans of your senses to enjoy themselves in the material world, and then you want to accumulate stuff, lobha, and then you get angry because it doesn't work out, krodha, and then those are the three gates to hell, Krishna says in Bhagavad-gita. We just get stuck in the material world like that. So we want to become Lord of the senses, and then it's much nicer, right? Then you have control, then you can follow your life following the path of dharma and bhakti, because you are in control. Okay, purport. In verse 30 of this chapter, which we covered in the previous class, Lord Krishna stated that one must retire from material duality by the proper means, which the Lord now explains. One may first consider the three phases of consciousness mentioned above, and then understand one's own transcendental position as spirit soul. One experiences childhood, boyhood, adolescence, adulthood, middle age, and old age, and throughout these phases, one is experiencing things while awake and while dreaming. Similarly, one may, by careful intelligence, understand one's lack of consciousness during deep sleep. And thus, through intelligence, one may have experience of lack of consciousness. That's the deep sleep. One may argue that it is actually the senses that experience during wakefulness, and that it is the mind that experiences during dreams. However, the Lord here states, Indriya Shaha, the living entity is actually the Lord of the senses and the mind, although temporarily he has become a victim of their influence. By Krishna consciousness, one may resume one's rightful position as master of the mental and sensory faculties. Also, since the living entity can remember his experience in these three stages of consciousness, he is ultimately the experiencing agent or the seer of all phases of consciousness. He remembers, I saw so many things in my dreams, and then my dream ended and I didn't see anything. Now I'm waking up. This universal experience can be understood by everyone, and thus everyone can understand that one's actual identity is separate from the material body and mind. And this is the point. The point is, so you look, it's happening every day. This is amazing, isn't it? It's happening every day. Every day you're going through this. Every day you have the chance to, whoa, wait a second, who am I? Who am I that is experiencing these things going on? I am the experiencer. I'm not the experience. I'm the experiencer. I am the agent who is experiencing these different states of consciousness. So who am I? Take a step back, and thus you'll attain transcendental realization. Verse 33. You should consider how, by the influence of my illusory energy, these three states of the mind, caused by the modes of nature, have been artificially imagined to exist in me. Having definitely ascertained the truth of the soul, you should utilize the sharpened sword of knowledge, acquired by logical reflection and from the instructions of sages and Vedic literatures, to completely cut off the false ego ahankar, which is the breeding ground of all doubts. All of you should then worship me, who am situated within the heart. So here, Krishna gives further explanation. And let's take this a step further. Now, as you've seen these three stages of consciousness, you should see that they have been, consider how they have been caused by my illusory energy, caused by the modes of nature, having been artificially imagined to exist in me. So this is take a step further and see how this isn't the ultimate reality, because you can see it's just passing through. It doesn't have like a definitive existence. It's just a fleeting, like the dreams. It's not different. It's compared to the dreams. We've compared to the dreams in the other classes here. It's just like the dreams. It's a different kind of dreams. So you're dreaming, and then you can see how this is all connected with my illusory energy, Maya. Now, once you understand the truth of the soul, then you have this idea of the sword of knowledge cutting down. Same thing in Bhagavad-gita. But here we have the sharpened sword of knowledge. And how did it get sharpened? With logical reflection and from the instructions of the sages and Vedic literatures. And that's what we're doing here. This is what this course is. This is sharpening your sword of knowledge. That's what we study these things, to sharpen our sword of knowledge. And what do we do with this sharpened sword of knowledge? We can cut off the false ego. That's the root of all problems. The source, the breeding ground of all doubts. Why? The false ego is where you identify with the body. That's what we're doing here. That's what we're doing. We're trying to overcome this false concept. When you identify with the material body and mind, that's the ahankara. That's where it all starts. And so in yoga, we gradually work our way to cutting off this false ego and then assuming a real ego, a real identity. Ego means I, identity. So who is your real identity? As an eternal soul. So then you understand that you're not the body and mind, but you're an eternal soul. So you use that with the sharpened sword of knowledge. All of you, then what do you do? And then what happens? What happens when I do cut off the false ego? What happens when I do understand my true spiritual nature? Then you should worship me, who am situated within the heart. And then you get to bhakti. So jnana here, this is like a heavy jnana topic. The whole Avatar is a jnana heavy avatar, right? It's not like sweet played leelas like Krishna, or adventurous stuff like Lord Rama, or even like dramatic things like Lord Nrsimhadev. No, this is a jnana heavy avatar, like Kapila. Kapila also, and we saw him in the third canto of the Bhagavad Purana, Sankhya philosophy is hardcore. Okay, but, so this is a jnana heavy. But what do you do with all this jnana? You take this jnana so you can sharpen your sword of knowledge, you sharpen your sword of jnana, so then you can cut off the false ego, and then you get to the point of bhakti. So then you worship me, who am situated within the heart, Krishna says. Okay. Purport. One who has obtained transcendental knowledge is no longer dependent on the three stages of ordinary consciousness, namely waking, dreaming, and dreamless sleep. One thus rids one's material mind of the tendency to become the enjoyer of the inferior energy of the Lord, material energy, and one sees everything as part and parcel of the Lord's potency, meant only for the enjoyment of the Lord Himself. And in such a state of consciousness, one naturally surrenders fully to the Lord's devotional service, which Lord Hamsa here advises the sons of Lord Brahma to take up. Very well. Okay. Verse 34. One should see that the material world is a distinct illusion appearing in the mind, because material objects have an extremely flickering existence and are here today and gone tomorrow. They can be compared to the streaking red line created by a whirling fiery stick. The spirit soul by nature exists in the single state of pure consciousness. However, in this world, he appears in many different forms and stages of existence. The modes of nature divide the soul's consciousness into normal wakefulness, dreamy and dreamless sleep. All such varieties of perception, however, are actually Maya and exist only like a dream. So, again, still using the dream analogy, still using the concept of dreams to go a little deeper. And what do we see? Krishna is saying, the material world is a distinct illusion appearing in the mind. Why? Why is it an illusion? Does it not exist? No, that's not the philosophy. We don't, it's called idealism. We don't practice idealism. It's not the philosophy that, oh, nothing exists, it's completely non-existent. No, it does exist, it's real. Material energy is God's energy. Krishna says, it's my Devyesha Gunamai, it's my divine energy. Okay, it's Krishna's energy. It's real. Material energy is real. Everything around you really exists. Okay, so it's real. But why is it called an illusion then? It's called an illusion because material objects have an extremely flickering existence. And they're here today and gone tomorrow. So that's true. So that's the nature of it. And what about the soul? The soul is eternal. It never ceases to be. It's like God. It never ceases to be. It's always existed. It exists now. It will always exist. It's unchanging, immutable. This is the conflict. Consciousness, soul, God, we are eternal, immutable. We don't change. Ever existing. No change. It didn't develop. It's not decaying. It's just forever what it is. God is God and will always be God and always was God and doesn't change. It didn't grow. It didn't just appear and develop and now he's in a certain stage and later he's gonna. No, it's just the same. Same thing with the soul. It's eternal. Doesn't change at all. So, but matter changes all the time. Never stops. Never ends. Always flickering in and out of existence. Things start here and then they're gone and then they come and then they're gone. Because here we have time acting. In the spiritual world, there is no time. The spiritual things are not subject to time. Time is what separates spirituality from non-spirituality. It's time, it creates that thing. Things are always changing. Constant flux. That's the nature of material energy. And that's why it's hard for us as eternal souls to be stuck in this body. always changing, everything's changing, everything, the body's changing, everything around us is changing. It's very difficult, and that's why we're, people are unhappy, you're stressed out, you're in anxiety, because it's very weird for the eternal soul to be around in a situation that is completely unstable, that is flickering in its existence, it's coming and going. It's very hard for the eternal soul to be in this situation. It's not normal. Purport. The Lord now describes an additional process for transcending the illusory interaction of the material mind and material sense objects. Lasa means jumping or dancing, and thus manaso vilasam here indicates that the material mind is jumping superficially from one conception of life to another. Or original consciousness, however, is one, vijnanam ekam. Therefore, one should carefully study the flickering, here today, gone tomorrow nature of the material world and detach oneself from the illusory variety of Maya. Very nice. Okay, now verse 35. Having understood the temporary illusory nature of material things, and thus having pulled one's vision away from illusion, one should remain without material desires. By experiencing the happiness of the soul, one should give up material speaking and activities. If sometimes one must observe the material world, one should remember that it is not ultimate reality, and therefore one has given it up. By such constant remembrance, up till the time of death, one will not again fall into illusion. Okay, so now we take this, how do we take all this then? How do we put this into action? How do we use all this knowledge and put it into action? So what we do is, you understood, now you understand the temporary, illusory nature of material things. Again, it's not that it's illusory in not existing, that's not the philosophy, but it's so fleeting, it's always changing, so therefore it's temporary. So understanding that everything in material nature is temporary. So now, having pulled away one's vision away from illusion, so you pull it away because it's all changing all the time anyway. So then what do? By experiencing the nature of the soul, you can remain without material desires, because at the same time, when you take this step back and you just feel yourself as soul, as the observer, as you concentrate and direct your mind to yourself, self-realization, you experience the soul nature, you experience the happiness of the soul. This is the interesting thing. When you do take this step back, and when you take a step back, when you're the observer, the witness, you can choose what you are observing and witnessing, right? The mind is compared to a mirror. So I take a mirror, and if I would turn the mirror around, it would have different things reflected on the mirror, right? I would turn around to myself, I see myself, I turn around, you'd see, the camera, you'd see the camera. So I can turn that mirror anywhere I want, and there'll be different things in the mirror according to where I direct it. The mind is like this mirror. So once I understand that I have this power and I'm the observer, so then I can direct the mind towards material nature, and I can observe material nature and the dream sleep and the deep sleep and all these things. Or I can take this mirror and direct it to myself. Say, no, look, let me just look at something else now. And when you do direct your mind to yourself, even just now, you don't have to be a great yogi or anything. You've done it, I'm sure, but if you haven't, just do it, just close your eyes, take a deep breath, and just observe your own self for a few seconds. Speak for minutes. And then you feel this joy, you feel this peace, you feel this natural happiness of the soul. That is your nature. Satchit Ananda, that is that's her nature. Sat, existence, Chit, consciousness, Ananda, bliss, that is the nature of spiritual consciousness. It's just what it is. It's just, you don't have to tweak anything, you don't have to adjust anything, it just is. So you have this natural happiness of the soul. So now, you take your little mirror mind away from things, you look at yourself, and there's this general, natural, constant bliss, happiness, joy of just being, of just yourself. And we haven't even taken that mirror and directed towards Krishna, which is super attractive. Radha Krishna and the Leelas, that's just, an ocean of bliss. But now just with us, just directing it away from matter towards us, first steps in spirituality. These are the first steps of a yogi. First you understand that you are a yogi, that you are yourself, that you are soul. Then you direct your mind to God, right? That's how Bhagavad-gita is structured. The whole first 6 chapters is about, figuring out that you're not your body and learning to, to do this stuff. And then Krishna starts talking about himself in chapter 7. Then you start talking about bhakti. And then when you go further, Bhagavad Purana, then you understand Krishna and Vrindavan, and then you can really, again, be in an endless ocean of bliss. But anyway, before we get to the ocean of bliss, just the happiness of the soul. So then you can just step back from material things, and then one should give up material speaking and activities. Now this can be interpreted in different ways, these instructions here. You do see once in a while here in the Bhagavad Purana the description of that kind of yogi. We see that with, for example, with Kardama Muni, Lord Kapila's father. He was this kind of sage, this kind of yogi, that in the end, he does the whole thing, he has Kapila as his son, but then in the end, what he asks for from his son is to be able to just roam the world in a vow of silence, away from anything, just experiencing the Lord within his heart. So you do see that once in a while, and we saw it earlier here in the Uddhava-gita. If you see the earlier classes, we saw the sage, Adyavaduta Brahmana, walking through the world like this. So you do see that once in a while. Not recommended for you or me, not really with, big government, not something that's happening today. Not going to work. They're just going to put you in an institution and it won't be very nice. So, but some of these sages, they would just, go off into the world, a vow of silence, Mona Vrata, just look, I don't want anything to do with anyone or anything. I'm just going to wander around. Usually they were naked. Just whatever. I don't care. It's like a giant, I don't care. I'm not talking to anyone. I'm not doing anything. If some food comes my way, I'll take it. If I starve to death, that's fine. Like Kardama Muni, no contact with fire, no heating. Obviously it's India, there were different contexts. They wouldn't work very well in, northern hemisphere, and it wouldn't work very well in many places of the world. But anyway, it worked for him. So you can do that. That's one way to interpret this. Not what we're doing though, no. So we'll take this instruction and make it real world, applicable to you and me. So applicable to you and me, what this means is giving up material speaking and activity. So what? You're going to be in silence, in your basement or something, locked up in your room. No. What that means is we no longer have to be engaged in chasing kama. This is the real thing. This is the what separates the yogi from the karmi. You know, it's on one side, the karmi, the materialist, his life is guided by, you know, the three gates of hell we mentioned. So it's guided by kama, lobha, krodha. That's what it is. If you look Bhagavad-gita, chapter 3, Arjuna is like, what? Why are we doing all these things? And Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, kama esha krodha esha rajoguna samudbhavas. It's like, it's kama and krodha. And then later, he's going to say about the three gates of hell. You know, trividam narakashedam. Look, this is the stuff that's keeping you in hell, in suffering. Kama, krodha, kama, lobhas, and krodha. You can mix the order around. So kama, so what's the kama on one side? What's on the other side? Dharma. The other side is dharma, because you have to act. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, look, you can't not do anything. There's no such thing as not doing anything. No, I'm just going to sit here and not talk. Well, that's doing something. You're sitting and not talking. That is doing something. You can't get out of it. No, I'm just going to stand here. Well, that's standing. You're still doing something. I'm going to lie down. You're lying down. That's still something. You can't get out of it. You're always doing something, whether you like it or not. So what are you doing? What's your motivation? Okay, that you can adjust. So what we're adjusting here is on one side we have kama. And on the other side we have dharma. So am I guided by the desire to satisfy my senses, kama, or lobha, greed, the desire to accumulate stuff? Or do I just get angry, krodha, because something's going on, so then I'm acting out of anger? Yes, violence, anger. Or, if I'm a yogi, am I guided by dharma? I'm doing this because it is my duty to do this. And a step further, because we're karma yogis, I'm doing my dharma as a loving offering to Krishna, bhakti. Now, if I'm doing my dharma as a loving offering to Krishna, which is what we're always teaching here in the 3T path, then I am no longer acting materially. I have given up material activities. Oh, but you're acting. What are you talking about? You're still going to work, taking care of your kids, and you just, cleaning the bathroom and cooking and shopping, but I'm doing that as dharma, as a loving offering to Krishna. That is no longer a material activity now. There's no karma involved. I mean, that's the whole instruction of the Bhagavad Gita. Now, that is a spiritual practice. I'm fully aware that I am an eternal soul, and I am now occupied in using this situation to serve Krishna. That's all I'm doing. I'm serving Krishna. I'm in bhakti. I'm in bhakti here because I'm here, right? You have to be where you are. You can't pretend to be somewhere else. This is my situation. That's what I'm doing. And that's the whole instruction of the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna is there in the battlefield. That's a battle. He's like cutting heads off. He's cutting arms and legs and heads off. And it's yoga. And it's bhakti. And it's not a material activity. It's like, what? Yeah, it's not a material activity. He's doing it as a loving offering to Krishna. Okay, so very important point. So you're going to do that and give up material. Same thing with speaking. You speak just because you have to, out of dharma, to glorify Krishna. So you don't have to just speak for material purposes. You can speak for dharmic purposes and for bhakti. Then, if you do that, then you can understand, you can remember always that this is not the ultimate reality, and that you've given up this material world. And by such constant remembrance up to the time of death, you will not again fall into illusion. Okay, I hope you got that. Let me just read this purport and we'll wrap it up. To maintain the material body, one cannot avoid eating and sleeping. In these and other ways, one will sometimes be forced to deal with the material world and the physical aspect of one's own body. At such times, one should remember that the material world is not actual reality, and that therefore one has given it up to become Krishna conscious. By such constant remembrance, by enjoying spiritual bliss within oneself, and by retiring from any material activities of the mind, speech, or body, one will not fall into material illusion. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments as follows. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta is a spiritual master of Srila Prabhupada, who was around the early part of the last century. Bhaktisiddhanta was. The living entity, while living in the external energy of the Lord, should give up anxiety for sense gratification and should not act for his personal enjoyment. Not kama, personal enjoyment, but dharma. Rather, one should search out spiritual bliss through devotional service to the Lord, to the Supreme Lord. By reviving one's relationship with Lord Krishna, one will understand that if one accepts any material object for one's personal enjoyment, attachment will inevitably develop. And thus one will be bewildered by illusion. By gradually developing one's spiritual body, one will no longer desire to enjoy anything within the material world. So I hope you enjoy that. Have a rest of your day with lots of peace and lots of love. Hare Krishna.